Sim racing allows us to not only live out our racing fantasies, but lets us try the crazy what ifs. Off-road trucks at Lime Rock? Sure. Formula Fords at Talladega? Why not? In that vein, today we'll put an old Formula One car in the Circuit de la Sarthe as we get ready to watch round 6 of the Lotus 79 Sunday Grand Prix Series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and joining me in the booth is IMSA driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Ryan Bauer, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Le Mans might be one of the most famous circuits in the world, but just to be safe, let's head to our track guide in case anyone needs an introduction. Welcome to Le Mans. When you talk about legendary circuits, this is a place that stands among the most famous in the world. Part permanent road course, part temporary street circuit, it traipses through the countryside just south of the city where it gets its namesake. Its size matches its reputation as well, clocking it at 8.5 miles, which equates to roughly 13.5 kilometers. However, when you take into account that it's split by only 33 turns, the frighteningly fast nature of this circuit becomes clear. Most of the corners have been added over the century of history it's experienced, but many have become renowned and respected. The two turns at the opposite ends of the massively long Mulsanne Straight play equally important roles. Tertre Rouge requires a great exit in order to not lose massive amounts of time, while Mulsanne Corner takes bravery and precision in order to brake as late as possible and keep opponents from passing you on the way in. There's also hair-raising moments like the tricky entry to Indianapolis, or the close walls along the bridge section in the Porsche curves. To win here, drivers will need a very low downforce setup, a good sense of strategy, and heaps of bravery. The 24 Hours of Le Mans is the crown jewel of endurance racing, which many drivers dream of someday winning and many fans flock to witness in person. Once you've driven the track here on iRacing, it's easy to see why. Well, I think speed is going to be the name of the game here today because, Joey, we lack the chicanes that you normally see at this track.
Absolutely. We are running Le Mans here with the no chicanes, 31 turns, 8.43 miles in total length. And really, it gets kicked off going down the Mulsanne straightaway for the first time. You mentioned it here in the intro. These cars, F1 cars on a 24-hour circuit, we're going to see what kind of top speed they have down the Mulsanne straightaway. It's going to be attacking the brakes going into Mulsanne Corner, also into Indianapolis and possibly into Arnage, one of the slowest, trickiest sections probably with these cars here. And then I think all of the cars with the low downforce setting are going to be on edge through the Porsche curves, all the way through the Ford chicanes and across the start-finish line. I can't wait to see the draft battles and also how much the cars are going to slide around in the last quarter of the lap.
Yeah, it's going to be wide open, that is for sure, in more ways than one. Now, as far as the championship, it's not been wide open, unfortunately. Juan Costa took another win and moves back up to the top spot. Here's the interesting thing. Gernot Frische has been fourth 3 times and then has finished second one further time. So he has been incredibly consistent, and that's why he's currently second place over Kimmo Viekainen. Timothy Reed's been kind of hovering thereabouts, but he's had a couple poor races where he slipped backwards. So he's down in fourth. Juho Reina not far behind him. From there, it's kind of a jump back to the rest of the field. Those top 5 have been the ones that have been up towards the top. Although Dylan Freckleton has looked quick, he's not been as consistent, needs a few more good finishes to be up with those top 5. Jack David Spickett also has been impressing so far. Let's take a look at the F2 standings, though.
It is Barry West standing on top right now by 13 points, but Keith Herner and Andrew Thomas only separated there by 4. Then look at this. 2 with a tie. Miguel Moreland, Taro Dahlberg, and Bjorn Ackerman only 3 points behind that. But really, this entire F2 field, it's going to come down to the last half of the season and putting in those consistent finishes because, Joe, look at this. Any one of these drivers inside the top 10 can definitely leapfrog themselves up.
That is for sure. Now, The race itself is not going to be many laps, as you'd expect. Only 11 of them that they're going to be doing around here. It's open setup, but you heard us talking about there's pretty much one way to go as far as setup at a track like this, and that is trim the car out. No spare car. It is a street circuit through the majority of the lap, so the barriers are close. Drive-through penalty at 17 incidents and a DQ at 25. While there is a fair bit of paved runoff in places, there's also some significant slowdown penalties. Those are probably a bigger concern than the incident limits, I think, here today. So we'll keep an eye on how that all works out. But right now, it is very early in the morning, so it's going to be quite cool, and we're still waiting on the first lap times to be completed.
This place is so long, it takes forever to get around it, 8+ miles in length. And if you don't get it in first gear, get out on the racetrack, you're only going to get one timed lap because of how long this place takes to get around. And we only have a handful of minutes here in qualifying.
Yeah, they get 8 minutes total to complete their 2 laps. At most tracks, that's absolutely plenty of time. But here, even though they do start them close to the start-finish line, they obviously have to get hustling just because of the multiple minutes it takes just to complete a lap. As we're watching one of our onboards, Cam Porter, and top split this time. Unfortunately missed out on the top split in the Lotus 49s a little bit earlier on, but at least he's here in the 79s racing with the big boys, as he has been doing quite frequently lately. And heading into the Porsche curves, let's see how it handles, Joey.
Taking it a little bit easy there. You see him go down a gear just to ensure he's got the grip, but he seems to be fighting the back end a little bit, a little nervous here through the rest of the curves. And this is where you're going to notice those downforce settings. I'm seeing notes over here. Oh, really loses the front end right there. You see Cam kind of smile, smirk, knowing he made a mistake. But when you run those low downforce settings, just the car doesn't have the grip through the medium speed stuff where you need it.
So we got Juan Micos to the first one to cross, sets a marker of a 3:20.3. He will have enough to come back around for that second lap. Tim Britton, 1.4 seconds off in second place. That's after 7 cars have set times. Now we get a flood of them. And Timothy Reed and Pepe Fuentes both beat Costa. Timothy Reed with a 3:19.2.
Now you said the times are starting to roll in. One car that I've got my eye on right here is Timothy Reed, is also Phil Reed. The 2 Reeds out there kind of laying down fast lap. But the reason why I was looking at the number 2 is he chose his first out lap as a complete warm-up lap, Joe. I know that some of these cars, they take a little bit of tire temperature, especially with the fronts, to get up to speed.
Yeah, missing that first one, unfortunately. He's going to have to really hustle here and hope that he gets a clean one on the second lap, or else he's going to be starting from the back.
Well, I saw there going out onto the Mulsanne, he drifted pretty wide. You mentioned those slowdown limits. It doesn't seem to be that he's got a slowdown, but you have to be really, really careful there. I'm seeing 202, almost 203 miles an hour.
Yeah, they pick up some serious speed down here. These cars usually don't get this fast, but they're doing everything to get the straight line speed, as Phil Reed tries to set it up for the Mulsanne kink, which isn't a problem in this car. We've had the 49s race this version, and they definitely need to worry about that little slip through there. But you'll see him just cut across. There it is. Used to be very fearsome in the old days with the 24 hours of Le Mans through that corner. But now he's got to spot the brake marker coming up at 200 plus.
And it comes up incredibly fast when you are traveling at that rate of speed, all the way down to probably second gear, then have to roll on the throttle nice and gentle, because remember, you don't have that downforce helping you at those slow speeds.
One more long straight here. I guess I just do still have another one going from Arnage to the Porsche curves, but this one really gets it wound up as it comes up to Indianapolis. And let's not forget, there's also extraneous factors in today. Might be early morning in the sim, but it's probably an early morning for a few drivers who have just finished the iRacing Spa 24 hours.
That's a great point. You know, you come off of one track, one type of car, and then have to come over here. So You're not only battling being tired, being up all night, trying to race and win, but now you have to hop into a completely different setting and do it all over again.
Watching from Phil Reed's perspective coming into the Porsche curves, Costa's going to be the first one across in the group for the second time around. And we'll see if he can improve and take that pole position back. I know he said he wasn't particularly looking forward to racing this one, but he feels like because he missed a round already, he can't afford to give up another of his drops this week. So Phil now through to the last part of the lap, and Juanmi Costa does improve massively. 3:17.6. He's back to the top.
Wow, I was not expecting that jump, and here we go. Here comes Phil Reed through the final chicane. He has not put a lap time down yet, and where does he jump up to? Looks like he's going to get up with a 3:19.0 into P2.
But he's pipped by Timothy Reed, who now jumps into that second position, still half a second off of Juanmi Costa. Pepe Fuentes jumps back into third, but Phil Reed with a fourth. That was much needed for that one. 20 seconds left. Unfortunately, I think we're going to get two cars that won't set a time. Jason Clapper, we expected, but Ellis Spice is going to fail to set a time here today. So that is our qualifying finished, and Juanmi Costa has put it on the pole position. Timothy Reed will start next to him. Pepe Fuentes, as I mentioned, will be P3, and Phil Reed in the fourth spot. Tobias Rohner will be P5. You've got JDS in the sixth position, followed by Daniel Banker in seventh. Seamus Power starts eighth today. Dylan Freckleton, lacking a little pace in qualifying, will start from ninth, and Nathan Finnegan rounds out your top 10.
In 11th place, we have the number 10 car of Tim Britton. Miguel Moreland next to him in 12th. Barry West in 13th. Keith Herner 14th. John Stevens in 15th. Donaciano Martinez in 16th. Cam Porter back there in 17th. Antonio Alvarez and Sam Ryman in 19th. Jason Clapper in 20th. And the final car, Ellis Spice in 21st.
This is top split out of two that we're seeing here today. So these are all the highest I-rating drivers. And as you'd expect, very cool conditions. Also, a fair bit of wind for this track. There's a lot of trees around. So this isn't usually a circuit that sees that much wind, but it looks like it's actually fluctuating pretty drastically. So that's going to make it even more difficult. On top of things, waiting for everybody to grid up. Thankfully, visibility will increase as the sun continues to come up, but they picked an incredibly early time. It's even before 7 a.m. virtual standard time.
I saw that very early, but the temperatures, they're beautiful for this low downforce setting. Confidence inspiring with those low track temperatures.
Absolutely, and just waiting on Power and Finnegan, it looks like. They're the last two that need to grid up. Power puts himself out on the grid, so Finnegan's going to be the last amongst them of our 21 car field before we get going. Doubt he'd want to start from the pit lane. You really want to be in the slipstream pack at the start of this race to make sure that you don't lose touch with the leaders. There he goes. That means the engines will now start to rev. We're halfway through the season at the end of this one, with it being round 6 of 12. The lights are up, and the green flag is out off the line. Who can get the power down? Pepe Fuentes can't. He starts to fall victim to those behind him as they plunge towards the Dunlop chicane. Phil Reed gets a pretty good run, and so does Tobias Rohner, both managing to overtake him, but Costa still leads Timothy Reed down into the chicane.
And a little bit of 2x2 further back in the middle of the pack, as to be expected, but seems like through the first chicane, we don't have any contact, any cars around. Still Juanmi Costa out front.
As you can see, remember, only 11 laps that they're going to be competing, but it takes a long time to get around this circuit at over 3 minutes. As they all exit out of Tertruge, who can get the power down, and without getting a slowdown penalty, it will be extra painful on the first lap.
I'm incredibly impressed with how much Juanmi Costa was able to scoot away, but props to Timothy Reed here in the second place car. He's stayed within the slipstream and now using that toe. And trust me, we don't have any chicanes here. You got plenty of time to use the toe.
And he's going to take it. I think they're going to try and work together, it looks like, because he wants to try and
leapfrog back and forth, but no, I don't know if it's going to work in these cars. Maybe just a little too draggy as they go side by side. They're just going to slow each other down now.
Yes, they will, but interestingly enough, look at they've gapped out 1.6 seconds to third place Phil Reed. So even though they are going side by side, it seems to be that they are holding parallel, holding them off.
Wow, it's wild seeing them zip around that kink here coming up towards the braking zone as they prepare to enter one of the toughest corners, Mulsanne hairpin, and under braking. Costa's going to stay ahead of Timothy Reed. Phil Reed is going to try and swing the car around that right-hander side by side behind him between Pepe Fuentes and Tobias Roeder.
Oh, looks like a couple cars got in a little bit too deep there through the Mulsanne corner, but no cars around once again. And yeah, it's just a draft battle between Reed and Costa, but right now Costa is actually going to slip into second place. Timothy Reed's going to take the clean air.
Okay, made it work this time. Maybe before they got up to top end, he was able to just scoot by. So what's Costa going to do in response? Will he sit behind him, or will he try and take that lead back immediately? It's still about 1 second between themselves and Phil Reed. So he has caught up slightly, but he doesn't want to drop much more than this because he's right about on the edge of the slipstream.
I assume that all of these cars are going to be running maximum low downforce, if you get what I mean. And so I don't expect them to drop back during the straightaway or necessarily gain time through the Porsche curves, but we're about to find out.
I think the word you're looking for is minimum.
There you go.
So they come through the Porsche curves now, and Timothy Reed continues to lead, actually dropping Costa just a little bit as he's struggling to stay with his rival. But there's definitely some battling happening behind them. Daniel Banker and Seamus Power just about nearly made contact, and I think poor Daniel Banker is going to lose out because of it.
And I'm incredibly impressed with just this pack of cars here. You see Daniel Banker having to struggle a little bit. I wonder if he's carrying any damage. Looks like he's heading to pit lane.
That is a bit of a shame there. Must have just touched the suspension a little bit there. Off course. Was that Phil Reed? Yes, it was. So he must have cut the course a little bit there in the Ford chicanes. As to his side, Nathan Finnegan takes a big look but can't get there.
Oh, and JDS in this pack. Look at the sun. I was going to mention this on lap one. Right here, through this first third of the lap, the sun is right in the driver's eyes.
Yeah, and only the trees briefly cutting it out, but it's right back there, and it's only going to get worse because it'll continue to rise and will be less to block it as they go on. But I've heard some drivers say that they don't keep the HDR turned on, which is be the setting that'll give you that image. So you can cheat it a little bit, but those that like to have all the fancy eye candy on are probably suffering a little bit as we watch Roner get a big run here.
Yeah, going to use the power of that slipstream. And what I'm noticing here, Joe, is these cars are topping out about 202, 203 miles an hour by themselves. Now, when they follow each other, they can get up there 205, 206. In fact, I'm seeing 208 from Juan Mi Costa right now, but that is in the slipstream. When they tuck out to make that pass, seems to stall out back down to about that 202, 203 range.
Fuentes with one of his Spanish heroes on his helmet, has the Alonso paint scheme on it, but he's going to be able to take that third place away from JDS. Interesting that we're getting almost kind of tandem pairs coming together here. Finnegan and Roner have been back and forth all down the straight as they now play chicken under the brakes down into Mulsanne hairpin. Both are going to be able to make it through. I see a lot of tire tracks through that corner as drivers slide around there.
Got to stand hard on the brakes, use the downforce when you've got it and how you can. And looks like it's all about the minimum downforce here. Timothy Reed really capitalizing on the straightaway. This is the second time he's gone by Juan Mi Costa heading down into Indianapolis.
He was wide there at Indy as well, just way off the apex. I'm sure Juan Mi, he's a savvy driver. He's probably taking notes on that, knowing exactly where Timothy is strong and what he needs to do to try and fight this. Still side by side behind them between Phil Reed and Pepe Fuentes there in that battle for third position. And they might be joined by Jack David Spickett pretty soon because he's definitely within the tow.
And Nathan Finnegan actually went off down there in Indianapolis, so that freed up Tobias Rohner to go and chase down JDS right here, who is chasing down Pepe Fuentes as well as Phil Reed. And you mentioned the pairs of drafting. Well, Timothy Reed, Juan Costa out front by almost 4 seconds. This right here is going to be a battle for third, the podium.
Looking like a two-horse race at the front already. We're only finishing lap 2. That gives you an idea of how long it takes to get around this circuit. So JDS is trying to hold on to the back of these two to get the last step on the podium. And hopefully for Phil Reed, he will not cut the course this time. Looks like he is good and scoots away.
Did you see that huge moment of snap oversteer from JDS right there? He's just kind of jumping over the curbs, had to catch the car as it was landing, and looks like Tim Britton off in the final chicane.
That looked like a potential slowdown to me. I think he actually had a bit of a spin, it looks like, going through there. Let's take a look at the replay. And he just about beached himself on those sausage curbs, so he's got to watch out. These are very low-slung cars, but second chicane here in this portion, and the car just disagrees with his inputs.
It looks so silly and so lazy. Like, why does the car spin out like that? But you got nothing pushing down on those rear wheels. Plus, you got all the weight on the front from being on the brakes. You got to be careful through the slow speed stuff.
Hopping on board with Martinez back here in the 12th position. He's chasing longtime racer in this series, Barry West, and Miguel Moreland just in front of him. A double draft here for Donnie in the number 15. So he's going to get a ton of speed, already up to 206, 207 that I'm seeing. A little bit of weaving in front of him as Barry tries to follow Moreland, but he's going to pop out to the left-hand side. What about Martinez? Will he just follow through? Will he make it 3 wide? Someone was telling us they can go 4 wide here easily.
And I even heard that if you know what you're doing in these Lotus 79 cars, you can go up there and start to bump draft lightly. But here you see Martinez, he just can't figure out which lane he wants to go in.
All I'm going to say about bump drafting a Lotus 79 is no thank you. I don't think I want to try that.
No, I agree, and typically you have to be perfectly lined up. And here we go into Mulsanne corner. Who's latest on the brakes here? Looks like it's going to be Miguel Moreland holding off Barry West, but Martinez, like you said, has got the front row seat, just couldn't figure out which lane he wanted to go in, couldn't pick the faster of the two.
Moreland going to remain in the top 10, at least from now, but this battle for the lead goes back to Costa, but he goes a little deep into Indianapolis. Did he
blew up.
Holy cow.
I think that was a downshift mistake right there, Joe. Let's listen.
Into Indianapolis, so it'll be coming up right here. There it is. It's gone. Smoke coming out of the back, telltale sign. And Juan Costa's out. There's no time to repair the car and get back out here. It's not an endurance race today. So that is going to be a very low score, probably a drop race for him. This will be only the second time he won't get a perfect score, and the first time this season that he won't finish, that he won't win in a time that he's showed up.
I was going to say, Juan Costa has been on fire, and this time it's his engine that's on fire on the side of the racetrack. A little disappointing to see if you're Timothy Reed out there. Now you're 5.5 seconds in front of the pack with nobody to race.
I don't think he's too disappointed, if I'm honest. I'm sure he's happy to be able to have a little bit more of a sure win as long as he keeps it on the island here as we come down into the braking of the Dunlop chicane. Once again, Phil Reed and plenty of action trying to fight off Pepe Fuentes and Jack David Spigot. It's going to become a 5-car battle pretty soon. Nathan Finnegan and Tobias Rohner, you can just see them far in the background there.
We were talking about the pairs of drafting earlier. Well, it looks like it's starting to line up like the typical draft train that we see here at Le Mans, but who's going to be able to capitalize on those shoulder passes like we've seen? And Joe, the other thing that I've noticed on some of these tracks, these Lotus 79 cars can maybe exploit the crest on the racetrack. Why do you think they're not doing it here at Le Mans?
I got to imagine that they're just way too low to the ground for that to make sense. I wonder if they're scraping and it's actually slowing them or even potentially doing damage. So it looks like they're for the most part avoiding it. Phil Reed had a big slide coming out of Tertre Rouge, and that means that he's pretty much a sitting duck for Fuentes, who is closing up on him. But will he slingshot past here and time it right? He's out into the wall of air that he's going to hit here, and you can see him slow as he tries to eke past, and he just didn't have enough speed.
No, but he's got half a car ahead, and I think more importantly, he's on the right side of the racetrack heading into Mulsanne Corner, which is a 90-degree right-hand turn. So as long as he's able to maintain this track position on Phil Reed, I feel like he's got the upper hand going into this corner right here. And yeah, just as we see it, I think Phil wisely concedes that position, even though a little bit of a lockup from going pretty deep.
Roner and Finnegan went a little side-by-side there as I think Finnegan slid through the corner. I know it's a long straightaway and the drivers have time, but it amazes me that Jack David Spickett in the middle of the race can type out "work together?" as he's watching that battle.
Yeah, no, it's a bit Ricky Bobby-esque with making the espresso inside the car going down the Mulsanne, but sometimes when you're watching the two cars together in front, you can free up a hand there.
See, we need Ricky Bobby 2, where he follows the French driver over to Le Mans.
In the Garage 56 entry.
Yes, exactly. Let's get to some Hollywood types once the strike is over and pitch this one, because I like this idea.
I love it, going to Jean Girard's home ground.
Yes. All right, into the Porsche curves. These grounds for Phil Reed are for second place now, and Fuentes has been trying to challenge him. They're trying to drop Jack David Spickett, and they might just, if they can hustle through these portions of these curves and try and drop the slipstream. It's about 0.7 of a second. That won't be enough, but just a little bit more before they get to the Mulsanne once again. They could actually break it.
Yes, they could. However, usually when you get cars battling side by side, the cars following tend to close that gap pretty quickly. And I think one thing that's really impressive so far, Joe, I mean, look at our leader. He's laying down 3-minute, 19-second lap times. Compare that to these guys, although they just picked up the pace. They just did a 3:20 here in second.
Yeah, still about 0.3 off the fastest time for Phil Reed. So I think Timothy's was maybe flattered a little bit by having the slipstream from Costa. Now that he's on his own, it's going to be harder to try and stay ahead. These guys are able to work together a little bit to find some more speed potentially and have quicker laps. So we'll see if he gets run down, but it is still at 6.4 seconds as we ride with Nathan Finnegan through the glare of the sun. And Tobias Roner just up ahead and within range as long as he doesn't botch this right-hander.
It's such an important right-hander, Joe, because it leads out onto the longest straightaway, probably in all of motorsports. Do you know of a longer straightaway than the Mulsanne?
Without the chicanes, I don't think that there is in modern racing, because it is longer than the Dario Hoa at the Nürburgring. So, yeah. But that said, in real life, this is broken up with chicanes. There's no series that runs it without it. But that gives you an idea there, that overhead view of just how long it goes. And I can tell you now, having been at this track in person, it is an absolutely huge track.
I can imagine, you see how long it is, and it's literally going through the countryside over here. I think the only longer straightaway might be in the Dakar Rally in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, and that's not a circuit course, so completely different beast. Oh, off the course there a little bit for Phil Reed. He's going to lose the track position, and Fuentes scoots on by. Jack David Spickett will get through, but he's able to get in line before he's passed by Roner.
Yeah, just a simple little mistake in the brake zone cost him 2 positions, and that's kind of the nature of the circuit. When everybody's doing the same top speed, you have to maximize the time in those little itty-bitty areas that you can gain time, and that's on the brakes in this car.
And Miguel Moreland has now had an off and falls to 17th. In fact, he nearly got hit on his way back in by Sam Ryman. So that was a problem for him as they come through Arnage now, this front group battling for second place. And looks like Jack David Spickett is sizing up a potential second if he wants to be aggressive up into the Porsche curves.
You know, and this has turned into a pretty big race for this group. And Jack David Spickett, a potential podium here. He's been one of these drivers that we've watched really progress his own skills through this Lotus 79 series. And he's sitting in third right now, trying to get up to second.
Phil Reed's been having some poor results this season. You saw it in the points. So I'm sure the Controller King wants to try and make up for it with his chance at a podium here today. I'll have to check and see if he's had one yet this season. He's still being chased by Tobias Rohner, but looks like they've pretty much lost Nathan Finnegan. He's about a second behind. It's going to be nip and tuck on whether or not he can keep up with them.
Oh, another mistake there from Phil Reed. Opens the door for Tobias Rohner, but not going to be able to capitalize on it. And that was just another slow speed area of the track, and Phil Reed had a big slide.
I think he should still be within touch. So as they come through the chicane, I think we might have an opportunity to go check out what happened to Moreland here. I only saw the tail end of the spin, so I'm not sure if he had some help.
Well, I assume this is going to be down into the Mulsanne corner here, Joe. Looks a little...
himself.
Yeah. I think that he got in a little bit too deep to be comfortable right there, and what he decided to do is give it all the brake pressure, lock it down, so that way everybody else knew the trajectory of where he was going.
Well, Tim Britton certainly appreciates that.
Yes.
So I thought for sure he was going to run into that target car, but thankfully they did not make contacts. And for Moreland, he runs in 19th. He must have some damage or something, because he's now headed into pit lane.
Jack David Spickett right on the back of Fuentes, and this is actually incredibly important because look at Phil Reed. He's actually losing time between these two. He's down to 1.2 seconds back, so they've almost broken that slipstream that you were mentioning.
As they come up to the braking soon of the Mulsanne hairpin, Spickett and Fuentes 1 second ahead, like you just heard. It's very, very close on whether or not they can break away. They don't seem to be interested in fighting. Fuentes is just gonna sit tight, and it comes down to about 0.8 of a second by the time they get onto the brakes. So Phil did gain just a little bit there. He's gonna have to hope that this is enough to really get back up onto them through golf course.
Well, and I don't see the confidence out of Phil Reed's car right now. Through all the slow stuff, it just seems to be very wiggly, very unstable underneath him, and that is not confidence inspiring. And on that note, I also saw Jack David Spickett through the Porsche curves lose ground to Pepe Fuentes this last lap, but he's got clean air this time. Curious to see if he makes the same mistakes.
You know, Phil has often told us that he feels like it's easier to catch slides with a controller just because he can move the wheel much quicker than everybody else. I wonder if the reverse is true, that the subtleties are a little bit more difficult since this is mostly him trying to go straight.
That's a really good point, and also when you're in a slow speed stuff, you have to be very smooth with the wheel to get those inputs that you want, and with the controller, that's incredibly difficult.
He is very good with that Xbox controller, but maybe this is where it's proving a little bit too difficult for him as he continues to chase down. He has caught up, so he's cut it down, and he's back in the game.
And this is what I was talking about. Look at this. Jack David Spickett, I know that he's got a 1 car length gap over Pepe, but really struggled through the beginning half of the Porsche curves. Now pulled it out a little bit, but I feel like if there's an area of the racetrack where that number 6 is struggling, it's through the Porsche curves.
Certainly looks like it. So battle between 4 drivers to decide second place is coming out of the 4 chicanes. Phil Reed easily overtaking Pepe Fuentes, who tucks in back behind him into 4th position. Also a little love to Jason Clapper. He is up 11, as he's known to really take these positions with his preference of not qualifying, but done an excellent job here today. I think he might have a little hard time catching the rest in front of him. It's about 6 seconds to the next one up the road.
Yeah, you know, just got to keep on swimming out there. And I'm looking at his lap times. They're pretty even, and you're right. It's Dylan Freckleton who is the next car in front of him. So it's going to be a tough road for Jason Clapper to go catch Dylan unless there's a mistake that happens. But Joe, how many times have we seen incredible performances from Jason Clapper? When are we going to see him qualify?
I don't know. We've asked him about it. Well, not asked him specifically, but on the show, we've said, when are we going to see him do that? He hasn't responded to us yet that I've seen. Is Martinez has a problem into the Dunlop chicane, loops it around, and everybody manages to avoid him. But it takes a little time to get it facing the right way, as that Nigel Mansell liveried car is going to get back going in 13th.
I'm happy you called it out. It's just another great livery slapped on this car. Combine that with the Target livery out there. It's just very nostalgic to these IndyCar days.
Yes, absolutely. That's the stuff I grew up watching for sure. Here we go again. As Spickett is leading Reed Fuentes, Roner down to the braking of Molson, hairpin, and they're all going to be able to make it around. But look at how close they're having to take it out to that gravel, trying to maximize that turn.
Pepe Fuentes is right on the back of Phil Reed. I don't think that he appreciated being shuffled back in this pack so much. I think he wants to get up there, start to get the clean air a little bit, and maybe get back on the podium.
All four still very much in the hunt with 5 laps to go. Going to be 4 laps to go soon. We haven't mentioned it much. Whoa, off course goes JDS. Is this going to lose him ground? No, he's going to be able to carry on just in time.
Yeah, he's got to be careful, though, because you as well as I know it's easy to overheat the tires. Plus, you got all that gravel and dirt on them. Just got to be careful. And here we go. Cam Porter trying to find a way. This is Keith Herner and Martinez right in front of him.
Yeah, Cam currently sitting in 15th, up 2 from the start, having to carefully decide where he wants to place the car here coming into Indianapolis. That has got to be really frightening, trying to break into that corner, especially this car as fast as it goes.
Ooh, a little bit of a lock up there in front of him, but it kind of stacks up Cam. He doesn't have anywhere to go coming out of Arnage, but has a really good run now after using the slipstream. Going to take a look down to the inside. This is going to lead into the Porsche curves where he will have the track position advantage.
Oh, but braking deep. Keith Herner breaks too deep. The car slides. Somehow he keeps control of it. Cam Porter's going to keep that 14th place. Sketchy stuff there for the number 20, but he keeps it on the island.
Great overtake, though. Cam Porter up another position, and now he's got nothing but Martinez in front of him. If you remember, Martinez has got some good speed, so maybe Cam Porter can go learn a few things and start catching another pack.
Keith is just drifting the car around some of these corners. He's got to be careful because you can't overheat these tires. Let's watch him coming through the 4 chicanes. Hopefully he's not drifting through here, but taking a lot of curb on the entry, exit. He seems to try and avoid it, but he does not go very fast off the corner as Cam Porter just runs away from him.
And shout out to Sam Ryman and Antonio Alvarez, also locked in that battle. That was about 5 cars back there for 15th.
Absolutely some fun stuff in the middle of the pack, but also fun here for second place. Fuentes back ahead of Reed once again. Roner and Spickett still giving a watch, now down to 4 to go as they're going to go side by side for P2, or at least attempt it. We're going to watch from Tobias's perspective. Speaking of all the vintage liveries, I think this is a Bobby Rahal one.
Well, you know better than I do with all this historic stuff. You remember all of it way better than me, Joe.
I watched a lot of it growing up, and I think I want to say, I had a slot car of this Kraco machine that's partly why I remember this one so well. That yellow and blue just stands out to me. Side by side, though, more focused on the racing Fuentes and Reed are. Oh, but it looks like Reed is a little deep.
Yeah, Roner gets a pretty good run off the corner. I don't think it's going to be enough to go up and challenge, so he's going to choose to slip back into the slipstream here behind Phil Reed. And looks like he's pretty close, but really it comes down to these 2 lead cars. Do they end up blocking the road, or is there a place for the 3rd car to go?
Well, what we're hearing behind the scenes, Michael the Turk is telling us absolutely the drivers need to get brave. I guess maybe this early in the race, not willing to try and risk it here, and maybe waiting for later on to try and do something more gutsy.
Yes. Oh, and there's a little bit wide from Fuentes through Arnage, but he was able to really save that mistake. I'm impressed out of that. He was flying into Arnage.
But he's not flying out of it. Here comes Phil Reed. He's got so much more speed. I think he's going to easily take the track position. And yes, he does as they come into the braking of the Porsche curve. So your order is second, Phil Reed, third, Fuentes, fourth, Roner, and fifth, Spickett. They've, boy, my goodness, they've dropped Finnegan by 5 seconds already. But that pales in comparison to Timothy Reed, who is 11 seconds ahead of this group.
Yes, I was mentioning the pace that our leader had earlier, and fast lap to fast lap, it looks pretty similar, but I tell you what, he's putting 1 second per lap on these guys.
So Timothy Reed getting ready to take his first win of the season if he can just bring it home in these final 3 laps here. He's taken many wins over in the Camel GT series in the Nissan GTP, which is somewhat of a similar car to this, using ground effects to get most of its downforce. How ironic that you take all the downforce away and Timothy Reed's finally going to win in this car.
Sometimes, you know, the stars align, and I mentioned that Timothy Reed might be a little bummed out that Juan Micosta isn't there, but you're right. I think he is plenty happy to see a checkered flag on the horizon and just be able to go do laps out there, know that you've got the skill to run away from the entire field.
What happened to Spickett? He's suddenly 1.2 seconds behind.
Well, Roner had, I was watching Roner. Roner cut the first chicane, so he had a slowdown. I can only assume that JDS maybe had a slowdown as well.
Either that or he had to give up time trying to go by him. So the top 2 get a little bit of a reprieve. It's 1.6 seconds. That is out of the slipstream from what we've been told. So JDS might have accidentally given it up, having to make that overtake unless the 2 of them can work together. They are going to swap spots back there, Tobias and Jack.
And remember, that all started with that mistake from JDS out of Indianapolis, that previous lap. Just kind of got on the back foot, and then plus Roner slowing him up with the slowdown. It kind of all adds up.
It's cut down to 1.5 now, so they've gained just a little bit. Again, it's going to be difficult, not impossible, but we'll see. They're running out of laps to try and sort it out as a peek to the inside from Fuentes on Phil Reed is not going to merit the position. You can see how hard it is for them to get the throttle down as the rear wants to really hang out.
And Joe, wasn't it JDS using the chat to say, hey, let's work together earlier in the race? I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the button again with Tobias Roner saying, hey, if we leapfrog this, if we play this smart, we can go catch him.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them. They are going to have to work together quite well here to make it work, and he is going to let him by. So JDS back up to 4th, and it does cut down to 1.2, kind of looking like it's working.
Yeah, it is, and you're not going to gain it all back in one straightaway. It's going to be a 10th here, maybe a couple tenths next lap, and you just got to keep the same mission and just keep chugging away at it.
Can't give up on this. You've got, what about 6 or some more minutes, maybe 7 or 8 more minutes to go in this race, so they could try and catch up. Oh, that's a little too hot for JDS. Now he's the one to make the mistake coming into the Porsche curves, and Tobias goes by, but they lost the time they made up already.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's a killer for confidence. I mentioned JDS was a little shaky going into the Porsche curves already earlier this race, and looks like it bit him out again, as well as Seamus Power.
Oh, and he was running up in, I think it was 6th or 7th position. Dylan Freckleton goes past him. Let's see what happened here. That's him in the red, white, and blue. Coming up into the first of the Porsche curves. Is that where he loses it? No, car looks steady. Oh, touched the grass and a big hit. Oh.
You called it, just on the switchback. I think he just used up a little bit too much of that road and got into the grass with the outside tire. No grip there.
Impressively, he's still running. He did not come into pit lane. He doesn't have a meatball flag. We're on board with JDS, though. I'm kind of keeping my eye on Seamus Power to see if the car is tracking straight, because I'm curious to see if he can bring it home these last 2 laps. There he is now.
I mean, it looks like he is up to speed, and he is in 8th place. I'm checking Jason Clapper's 2.5 seconds back, so maybe even if he's not up to 100% pace, he can still salvage a top 10.
Indeed. It'll depend on how much speed he's lost in a straight line, as the car doesn't look like it's got much grip there coming out of Tertre Rouge. I think we had another problem for Martinez, who's off at the same spot he was before.
You called it, first chicane, and there was nobody around him when this happened. Check out this GSRC replay. He's just going to have a big lockup going into the first chicane, and just too much speed, around comes the back end.
That's twice he's had an unforced error into that same corner, and almost the exact same way it looks like. I think that's how he spun it last time. Was able to whip it around and get moving, but look at that, 3 cars in just that little bit of time had already overtaken him.
A little bit of a tough road today for Martinez, and this battle continues to rage on. I'm surprised Jack David Spickett got immediately back on the horse after falling off the last couple laps. And look at this. They're still in touch with Pepe Fuentes, but Phil Reed has actually gapped it out.
Yeah, so maybe Fuentes had his own mistake, and that brought it back down to 1.2, just about within the slipstream. Phil Reed trying to run away with them, run away from them now, as there goes JDS past Roner, coming up through golf course into Indianapolis, under braking as they try to whoa it up here. It looks like they're going to be able to make it through there successfully. We've already seen at least one car go off at that corner.
Owen Fuentes has a lockup there into Arnage. That's the second time we've seen Fuentes go with his hair on fire into Arnage, and like last time, gets a very poor exit. That means Jack David Spickett is officially caught up into the slipstream.
And Phil Reed is out of touch by a wide margin now. It's 2.5 seconds. He just has to keep out of range of these 3, and he potentially has this second place wrapped up as our leaders getting ready to take the white flag here in just a couple moments.
You called it, Timothy Reed through the Ford chicane, through the final chicane. Got to be careful, really tiptoe through the card there, and Barney's holding the white flag.
Not waving it, though, apparently.
No, he's not.
Some sort of bug there that maybe iRacing will have to be aware of. You know, the other fascinating thing about this race is we've only lost one driver, and it was Juan Costa. He is going to be kicking himself for that mistake.
You know what? That's a great point, and everybody's on the lead lap. Granted, it is an 8.5-mile lap out here, but everybody on a pretty similar pace today.
Yeah, top split showing why this is the fastest of the fast here in the Lotus 79 series. But Jack David Spickett behind Fuentes, and then Roner behind the pair of them on the last lap to sort this one out and to decide the final step of the podium.
I'm curious to see how this is going to go down, because I do believe that Jack David Spickett, his weakest part of the racetrack is the end of the racetrack. But look at this. Fuentes got a problem coming out in a Mulsanne 3 wide.
But almost. It looked like Spickett lifted for a second, and he didn't have a slowdown penalty that I could see. Maybe he did not want this. Maybe this was intentional from Fuentes. He wants to be sitting behind, knowing that he can draft by. It's Talladega rules, I guess. You want to be in second, not in first.
I just couldn't believe that Tobias Roner didn't take it 3 wide for me. I had it called up.
He's still looking, and now Jack's going to let him through. Roner's going to be able to get by. Who wants to lead this pack? Nobody wants to be in front.
You're right. Fuentes has the track position on the right side. We're going to see if Roner can go deeper on the brakes into the Mulsanne corner. But I feel whoever comes out of Arnage is going to be the winner of this pack.
Coming up to the braking now. And as they exit the Mulsanne straight for the last time, a big slide for Roner. He takes it too deep. I don't think he's going to be able to get back on in time. No, he's going to lose touch. Now it's down to 2. Spickett and Fuentes.
This is the battle for the final step on the podium. Fuentes is trying to pull the snake right, left, right, down the straightaway, trying to break the toe.
So they've lost at least one of the trio, but it still needs to be decided between these two. Spickett's been fierce this race, but so has Fuentes. Both of them have made their fair share of mistakes. I thought Roner might be out of it, but he's within 7/10. I just don't think he has enough long straights. Jack thinks about the move, but then does not take it and trying to put the throttle down. Tobias is desperately trying to get involved.
Yeah, Roner has caught back up. I really feel like Fuentes might have even missed a shift between Indianapolis and Arnage there, but I really do feel like Fuentes with the clean air has the advantage right now.
I don't think we've got a pass, but you never know here. They could have something change hands coming through the Porsche curves. It's already elicited many mistakes from drivers so far in this race. Ahead of them all, Timothy Reed has managed to cut out the mistakes and take his first win of the season in the Lotus 79 Sunday Grand Prix Series here at Le Mans.
Looks like Pepe Fuentes is actually starting to gap it out just a little bit over JDS, but two tricky brake zones remain. The Ford chicane, the final chicane here. Can Fuentes hold on? Roner's going to show his nose down low, but it will stay. Pepe Fuentes, Jack David Spickett, Tobias Roner in fifth.
Brilliant battle there at the end between all of them. They left nothing on the table. Clapper is going to get a top 10, by the way. In fact, he will finish in 8th position. Poor Seamus Power with his damage. He fell all the way down to 10th in the end. Just couldn't keep up the pace. There you see Clapper coming across the line now. Like you said, pretty much everybody on the lead lap. Sam Ryman, one of those, fighting with Martinez. Martinez has already slipped up twice, but I'm not sure he's going to get another one here. We'll see.
No, he's just I think he's a little bit too far out in front, but you're right. Martinez has made a few mistakes. As long as he doesn't get a slowdown or any big lockups here, Sam Ryman and company navigate through the final chicane.
Ooh, close there between Herner and Martinez. Herner will beat him to the line, and the last of our drivers are eventually going to trickle across as they finish up here. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back with the official results as well as driver interviews, so stick around.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome back to the Circuit de la Sarthe. Here, Le Mans put on a pretty good show, I have to say, for an unusual combo at the Sunday Grand Prix Series. And Timothy Reed took his first win of the season. He was going to battle with Juan Costa, and they did at first, but Juan made the mistake, and he wound up the only DNF as Timothy was able to run away by himself. Phil Reed certainly did not have it his own way, had to fight off many comers to eventually take that second place, and Pepe Fuentes, much the same, was all the way down to the finish, eventually claiming the last step on the podium over the likes of Jack David Spickett in fourth and Tobias Roner in fifth, fighting him completely to the checkered flag. Nathan Finnegan was 6th as Dylan Freckleton finished P7. Then it was Jason Clapper in the 8th position from 20th on the grid. Tim Britton was 9th, and Seamus Power at least gets a top 10.
Then we have Barry West in 11th place, John Stevens in 12th. Keith Herner and Dominica Martinez, they're locked in that battle, but Keith Herner finishes 13th, Martinez 14th, Sam Ryman here in 15th. Cam Porter, unfortunately, I saw that he had a problem on the last lap, drops down to 16th place. Ellis Spice 17th, Antonio Alvarez 18th, Daniel Banker 19th, Miguel Moreland 20th, and the only DNF, Juan Costa in 21st.
Timothy Reed gets his first low downforce win here today after a couple of wins earlier on in his career. Tim, would you count this as one of the easier victories, considering Costa kind of left you alone there?
Yeah, it's a shame that happened to him. I was really looking forward to it. We had similar pace. He had more top speed. I had more downforce. So I think we worked together to get a gap, and I think it was going to be a good race. You know, kind of won those down the last lap going into Indy. I was planning on making a move, but yeah, it's a shame. Could have been fun.
That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, but you can't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Exactly.
You came home with the win. From there, were you just kind of focusing on your own race, making sure that those behind you didn't have a chance to catch up?
Yeah, I was kind of nervous at first because there's 3 or 4 guys ideally working together. And, you know, if you work together on the Mulsanne straight, it's a good, like, second and a half or something. I really don't know what it is, but it's a lot. So I lost my draft buddy. So I was like, oh, crap, they're going to probably catch up to me because we had, like, still, I don't know, 7 or 8 laps to go. So it was really just keep an eye on them. Keep a gap, and fortunately it looked like they started breaking up a little bit or battling, and I was able to just kind of take it easy and focus on not spinning in the forward chicane like I usually do. So yeah, it was all right drive.
Well, this one kind of a bit of a long time coming for you. You had a couple second places to start the season off, and then a slight dip in form. Is this kind of get a monkey off your back for this season, at least get a victory?
It feels good to get a victory. You know, this track is way different than the other track, and it kind of equalized Wanby's pace. I haven't had similar pace to him since Red Bull Ring, I think the first week. And so, yeah, you know, I'm fortunate to get the win. But I'm not saying that I'm up at Wanby's pace for all the other tracks for the rest of the season. So I'm sure he'll continue to dominate.
I understand. Kind of got to take it with a grain of salt. Well, regardless, congratulations, Timothy. Now a winner in Camel and Lotus 79 this season.
All right, thank you.
Timothy Reed, your victor. And he's followed by Phil Reed, no relation, but the controller king, going to be talking to Joey Atterbury.
Phil Reed, awesome race out there. Congratulations on the second place here today.
Yeah, thank you. It was kind of a surprise. I think. Well, let's call it third with the Juanmi loss. But yes, very pleased with that. Very happy.
I saw you put in the chat there that it was a little bit tricky. Talk to me about the race today and what were the tricky conditions? Was it just a low downforce setup combined with the drafting?
Yeah, I mean, typically I've always struggled with a lower downforce, a bit more loose on the rear, that kind of thing. I think especially the braking here into some of the corners was really tricky. I was struggling a bit with the braking into the first chicane and at the end of the Mulsanne into Mulsanne. But then I was not, because finally I normally struggle into like places like Indianapolis and stuff like that, but actually I was surprisingly comfortable there. But yeah, no, it's just that, and this kind of like slipstreaming racing, tactical, when to fight, when to sit back, you know, how trying to work together and not really like knowing what the other person's really going to do, because you don't have that obviously direct communication with them. So I always struggle with it a little bit mentally. Like I always don't really know exactly where I should be going. And as soon as I'd lost the sort of gap to Juanmi and Tim, I think, you know, I guess I resigned myself to the fact that it's like, oh, well, I'm not catching them now. I don't think even if we work together, it's not going to matter because they can work together. So it was kind of like at that point, it was like, okay, well, I won't fight too hard, but I won't push after it too much either.
Okay, I got you out there. And yeah, you're right. The low downforce stuff is a little bit trickier. And the other thing that I noticed, the sun was so low today. Did that bother you at all?
Actually, not as much as I noticed a couple of people mentioned it before going in, that the sun was quite bad. And I don't know if perhaps I run lower graphic settings so that it's not so bad. But I was actually pleasantly surprised that, because I know it can be quite bad here. But no, I didn't really notice it. I think I was probably too focused on other things. Perhaps it was blinding me and I just didn't notice.
Well, great job out there, Phil, not only fending off everybody through that entire race, but then pulling out that gap there at the end and finishing in second place.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That was Phil Reed, driver of the number 2 car.
And behind it all, Cam Porter wound up 16th today. A little bit of a slip up at the very end. Cam, it looked like you were having a good run until that spin at Indianapolis.
Yeah, that was a really fun race, especially with Keith Herner. I was just trying to play it safe at the beginning, trying to keep the car under me. This car is so different with the low downforce setup. I was using the community setup this week, this week. So thanks to the community for sharing. Yeah, and then just going into Indianapolis in the last corner, I just aggressively downshifted without flipping enough throttle, and that's what caused me to lose the back end. But that was a really fun race regardless.
What was it like with such low downforce, especially through the Porsche curves and places like that? What did the car feel like?
Well, it's a completely different car. When I first started doing a few practice laps, I was using another set, and I forgot to load the community Le Mans set, and I was like, oh, this feels great. And then I was like, oh wait, someone passed me like I was in a different class almost. So I was like, oh, I forgot to load the set. So I loaded the set, and all of a sudden it's a completely different car. My braking points are about 50 meters earlier, and just a lot more slippery and difficult on the brakes, like Phil was saying. So a lot more difficult to drive. The car moves around a lot more, in the corners and stuff, but fun. It was a really great race.
Oh, I'm glad you had fun with it. Even still, are you excited to get back to something a little bit more normal for this car at Phillip Island?
Oh, Phillip Island. I love Phillip Island. I do a lot of supercars racing, and that's always on the schedule, so I'm pretty familiar with the track, so hopefully I can have a good run there.
Well, we'll look out for you. It sounds like you got some good experience then, and commiserations that maybe it wasn't a bit better, but at least you saw the checkered flag.
Yeah, it was a great race today. Thanks, Joe.
That was Cam Porter, who finished 16th in the end, which is going to wrap us up. So once again, a big thank you to the Lotus 79 community for bringing us back for another season of coverage. And also thanks to the team, Joey, Ryan, Dougie, and of course, our special helper behind the scenes, Michael DeTurk. Make sure to check out our social media, website, and merchandise store. But don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you won't miss a moment here on GSRC. Like we said, next race, Phillip Island Down Under, Sunday, July 30th, will be at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. But be sure to check out our other broadcasts that we have listed here. And until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.